Greetings. It's great to be with you again. This is the March edition of Partnering in Mission. Bishop's Partners in Mission has this video newsletter that goes out once a month. If you haven't listened before, I hope you will go back and catch the previous editions of this. We want to first remind you what this is about. Bishop's Partners in Mission takes care of two focuses of the Susquehanna Conference. One is to raise funds for Imagine No Malaria, where we help people who are ravaged by the deadly disease of malaria find treatment, prevention, education, and communication to restore lives and restore hope for their communities. The second focus is Mission Central, helping reduce the debt of Mission Central so Mission Central can do what it does best: meet the needs of people who have been ravaged by natural disasters and helping churches live up to their mission. Today, we are very fortunate to have with us the Harrisburg District's ambassador for Bishop's Partners in Mission, Mr. Russell Goodman.
Thank you, Dilip. Thank you very much.
Russell, we are delighted to have you here because you have been active in the district. We have 7 districts in the conference. You are active in the Harrisburg district. I know you are a lay leader at the Derry Street United Methodist Church. Would you please tell us a little bit about the church, and then we can ask you what you've done as an ambassador?
Sort of the jack of all trades there at Derry Street, master of none. But one of the things that I'm doing there is to try to increase the awareness of this dread disease and what can be done about it. Let me tell you just a little bit about the church itself, though. Derry Street United Methodist is about 130 years old. It's at Derry Street and 15th there in the Allison Hill district of Harrisburg. This is a church that I'm told back in the 40s and the 50s had several hundred members there. But of course, like so many churches in the inner city, many of the members have moved away over the years, have drifted away into the suburbs, and quite frankly, because it's an aging church, a number of the membership have died, have passed on. That leads to a number of challenges, but it also leads to a number of opportunities for our church. We are reaching out, we being Senior Pastor Matt Granderson, and other folks in the church are reaching out to a very new demographic there in the Allison Hill area, inviting them to become in and be a partner, a member of our community there at Derry Street.
That is awesome. Looks like your presence in the community. One of the questions that people frequently ask is, how can a small church or church in a place that isn't really growing dramatically still do Bishop's Partners in Mission? How did you run a fundraising operation there?
It's interesting that you should mention the size of the church. I guess when you look at it individually, how can I, as an individual, contribute or make any meaningful contribution to anything when there are so many other people who have more money than I? Well, it's the same situation or the same question that a small church might ask. How can I meaningfully impact an initiative like Imagine No Malaria, whereas there are much larger churches, larger congregations that are able to do that? Still, you can do your part and you can have a very meaningful impact when you consider that for every $10 that you are contributing, you statistically are saving a life. Every $10. So it really makes no difference how small your church is. You can have a life-saving impact on some child in Africa who can grow up to be somebody who can have a major impact on the world.
That is awesome. That thought that everyone can contribute. What did you all do at Derry Street?
What we did is to inform the congregation that we were going to have a fundraising sermon. After a sermon that would be coming up in a couple of weeks, we would be taking up an offering, a special offering for Imagine No Malaria and, of course, for Mission Central. We mentioned this to the folks a couple of weeks in advance because we wanted to prime them that of course there would be two offerings, the regular offering for the church and then a special offering for these two initiatives. You can't do this kind of thing if you don't get the proper buy-in from the authorities there, i.e. the senior pastor. Of course, we had that, and we were quite successful. We also, realizing the small number of folks in our church, and that we would be going to them for a church offering first, thought, well, let's see how we can maximize our numbers. As it turns out, we have a Spanish service at Derry Street. They were invited to be a part of the 10 o'clock service, the traditional service, if you will. The Imani African Christian Church meets there at Derry Street in the chapel. They were asked to be a part of that same service. So we maximized the number of people that we would be appealing to after our sermon.
I see.
It was a successful way of approaching it.
Yes, I love that partnering idea. And also you provided education, information, you raised awareness before the actual event itself. So people came ready. I understand, Russell, that you've also helped or assisted or encouraged another church in Harrisburg with their own fundraising event. Tell us about that.
Trinity in New Cumberland had a very successful fundraising drive under the leadership of one of its members there, Carol Everett. That's a larger church, and no doubt they raised a larger sum. My function as the ambassador for the district was to go there after that fundraising drive and to thank the members of that church for what it was that they did, for making, for setting aside a significant sum for the initiative, and to remind them this is a continuing program. It isn't necessarily one and done. This is something that we are continuing to do. The bishop wants to continue through much of 2017. And so to remind them that while we thank you, and you have made a positive impact, don't doubt that for a moment. There are people who will be living because of what you have done. You still have an opportunity to make an impact going forward.
It's not a once and done thing, but something that we can continue because the human need continues there. Right, excellent. Before we conclude, Russ, there are many churches who intend to have a fundraising event, intend to support Bishop's Partners in Mission, intend to support Mission Central, or intend to support Imagine No Malaria, but it's all been just plans, and I see many churches just thinking about it. What are some things you would suggest to get them over the hump and get things moving?
You know, number one, you have to get the buy-in that I mentioned earlier. You have to go to your leadership and say, we want to do this. You have to explain to them what's the purpose of this initiative, because of course there are other initiatives, no doubt, that are going on in that church. What makes this one different? So you need to be able to get that kind of buy-in from the senior pastor. You may need to approach your missions director if you have someone with that kind of title to involve him or her. And then of course you need to determine, how are you going to approach this? Are you going to simply sermonize, as a number of churches do? You know, when we gave our sermon, we drew upon Matthew, and we drew upon the parable where Jesus is speaking of the sheep and the goats, and he says, I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was naked and you clothed me. I was a stranger and you took me in. And very, very important, I was sick and you took care of me. I had malaria. I could have had malaria, and you took care of me. Very important. You can approach it simply by doing a sermon like that, or you can have a more elaborate approach where, for instance, you might try to involve the children in the Sunday school in making mosquitoes or something of that nature to increase their awareness of what's going on. they will speak to their parents. They will make a big impression on their parents. Look what we're doing. Then when you make the appeal to the parents, it's so important that you set aside money for this initiative. The connection that's already been made between them and their children will be there, and the impact will be great. Let me just say this. There are any number of projects that a church can involve itself in order to promote awareness of and to enhance the giving that you are hoping to receive. If anybody wants to speak with me about that, I am delighted to talk with them about these programs, to talk to them about putting together special videos for these things, so that they can have a visual impact on their congregation as well. Call me up. Glad to talk to you about it. Glad to come over and speak at your church if you like.
That is awesome. I hope many of the churches in Harrisburg take advantage of what you're offering, Russell. And thank you. Thank you so much for appearing on this segment, for sharing your knowledge, your expertise, and your openness to be used by other churches to help them with their efforts to support Bishop's Partners in Mission.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
And so, as we conclude this segment, I ask you to pay attention to the contact information given for Russell Goodman, Harrisburg District Ambassador, for myself, Dilip Abayasekara, Field Coordinator. We look forward to supporting you, every church in our conference, in whatever way you find doable for your particular situation, so that we all tap into the reserve we know we find in Ephesians chapter 3:20. For God is able to do far more than we can imagine, because He is able to achieve His purposes when we are willing. Thank you for listening. May God bless you. We'll meet you again next month.